Hello, everyone, and welcome to our video interview. Hope you're all enjoying the Pop Culture Online Fest so far. My name is Nigel. I'm the co-founder of the manga brand Mayamada, organizer of the Gamepad events, and co-host of the Story X Story podcast. So as part of the festival, I've been speaking to people who have been previous exhibitors, just to find out about their journeys and things they've learned along the way, and hopefully that is of interest to everyone watching. So my guest right now is comic artist Laura Howell. Laura, welcome.
Hi Nigel, thanks for having me on.
Cool, no problem. So like I said, we're going to get into Laura's story, find out how she got to where she is right now. So as you're watching, you're welcome to give us feedback or any questions after you've had a watch of the interview, or you can reach us on social media. We are at Mayamada on Twitter and at MayamadaTees on Instagram. So let's get to know Laura. So you're a UK-based comic artist. You are the first, or were the first female artist to draw for the Beano, which is something I definitely read when I was growing up. And you've worked with a bunch of publishers. So I've got, I've seen like Viz, Mad Magazine, Boom Studios, and you've also worked on other well-known titles like Cartoon Network's The Regular Show. Another thing I've watched, spent a lot of time watching, so we're definitely going to dig into that. But my first question for you as a past exhibitor, which Malta Comic Con did you go to and how did you find it?
I would have gone to the one in 2018, and it was absolutely fantastic, because I've been to a lot of UK-based Comic Cons, but very, very rarely exhibited overseas ones. So it's really eye-opening for me to see a Comic Con in a completely different country, and I'd never been to Malta before, so that was a brilliant experience as well. But yeah, it's a fantastic event, very friendly. I was astounded at how many Beano fans I met there, really? Which was really nice.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a big property, I guess, like Dennis the Menace especially. He's one of those iconic characters. I also think we went to the same year, 2018. I feel like we might have gone to the same convention, possibly. I'm trying to think now.
Oh.
No, actually, I think I went to 2017 and then 2019. I don't know. I'll check my calendar. Yeah. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. Like it being a very friendly convention, and it was good to see. Like it's always good to see like other fans of comics in another country because it gives you a whole different perspective and like
absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that's really cool. So yeah, what I wanted to find out is just how you got to where you are now. And as I do more of these interviews, it's always interesting to know that there are so many routes to get to where you want to in the creative industries. So tell me, like, how did you start making comics? Was it always something you wanted to do, or was it something you found along the way?
Well, yeah, I mean, every single comic artist's breaking into the industry story is different. And I mean, mine almost didn't happen. Because I mean, I've loved drawing, ever since I was really, really tiny, and kind of specifically drawing, comic characters, cartoon characters. And I just did it constantly in my spare time as I was growing up. And then when I was a teenager, I kind of had this plan that I wanted to go to university and learn to become an animator. Because more than anything else, even though I loved comics, I really loved cartoons. I wanted to learn how to make cartoons. I taught myself animation at home, and kind of made my own animations.
Really?
This is kind of before the days when you could do it on your computer. This was like old school Super 8 camera on a tripod with, a pegboard underneath it.
That's dedication.
But I didn't actually do that. I bottled out of it. I didn't have enough confidence in my own ability to to do it. So instead of applying for a university course in animation, I went and did English instead, and
that's very different.
I just thought to myself, well, it's okay. I'll still draw in my spare time. It'll be enough for it to be a hobby. That'll be fine. I continued drawing in my spare time, for years after that. I got a job as an editor at a children's book publisher. And that was, again, fine. But I always had this kind of itch to actually do drawing for a living. And I got to my late 20s, still working in editing. And I thought, do you know what? I really want to find out if I'm good enough to draw professionally. And if I don't do it now, I probably never will.
I've had a similar thought.
Yeah. But I was the classic case of the right thing happening at the right time. Because just around then, I found out about a course that was running in my home city, Birmingham, called Strip Search. They've changed the name now. And it was designed to help people break into the comics industry. And the two tutors on the course were famous comic artists, John McCrae and Hunt Emerson. And long story short, I got a place on the course, and their positive feedback to me kind of gave me that confidence boost I needed to actually make the leap and try and become a professional. Because they both said, well, we think you could do it. And, you hear it from someone who's already in the industry, you think, oh, well, they must know what they're talking about.
Yeah,
I'll give it a shot.
Notice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually started out on the Beano, helping Hunt with the strip he was drawing for us at the time, which was called Rats. I did some inking for him, which got me on the Beano editor's radar, and he asked to see some of my own art. And he liked what he saw and said, right, well, we'll give you a try. We'll give you a one-page comic strip to draw. And that was in 2007. And I've been working pretty consistently ever since. Wow. So yeah, it's worked out quite well so far.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't gone on that course and met those tutors, I probably would still be thinking to myself, oh, I bet I couldn't do it for a living. I bet I'm not good enough for it. So yeah, sometimes you've got to, take that leap of faith, and you'll find it may not work out. I was fully prepared to try and fail at it. But I thought it would be worse to not try.
Yeah, because that would always stick with you. And that was a similar thing to me when I was creating my brand in that. Because my background is software engineering. I have an engineering degree. So, but I just felt like this was something I wanted to do. And before I get to the point where it becomes too hard to go another route, let me see what this would be like. Yeah. So no, that's really cool. So as you were there and you got that chance to draw did you say like the one-page comic? And it's always like that kind of title of being the first sort of anything to do whatever the thing that's being done. Like what did that mean to you at the time to be the first female artist for the Beano?
I didn't realise at the time. I'd been working for them for a little while when the editor said to me, we've been looking into it. And we think you're the first woman that's drawn for us.
Oh, right, they didn't.
And I mean,
know.
Given that the Beano was, coming up to 70 years old at that point, it felt pretty significant.
Yeah.
But I mean, women are generally a little underrepresented in humour comics anyway. But it was still surprising. But there are more of us now. There's 3 or 4 of us. So,
okay. I think the fact that you can still count them
in the last,
on one hand
years
might be a problem. But I guess any progress
Better
is
than
good
none.
progress. Yeah, there you go. I totally understand that kind of, just being the first and realizing, because once you're the first or one of a few, you kind of get the scale of the issue and how much more there is to go. So I totally get that. And just thinking about your journey from like doing English to being an editor and into working on comics, are there any skills that you picked up along the way that kind of transferred from one to the other?
Obviously, if I'm lettering comic pages, I'm paying very close attention to the spelling and grammar, because I'm super pedantic when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, you have to be there.
Yeah, I think just an eye for detail. Wanting to make sure that if someone's looking at your page, they're not going to be able to kind of go through and go, oh, that's a mistake, that's not consistent.
Yeah.
Just, kind of keeping it in an organised shape.
Yeah, no, and it does pull you out of the experience when you, like, just if people think as a reader, if you're reading something, it's a mistake, like a grammar or spelling, it totally pulls you out of the experience. And so I have to work with young people, and I do like comic workshops, just having like young people create their own stories. And yeah, it's just the amount of times that I just have to point out like spelling and grammar. And I don't think it's important, but it is important. So you kind of have to remind them of that. So you're at you're working on the Beano, and that sounds like it's going well. So then you've got, like I mentioned, you're working with a number of different publishers. So how did you transition then from working with the Beano to also getting these other opportunities with different publishers?
Well, the next big job I got after starting at the Beano was within kind of a year or two, really. Within the first year, it was 2008. There was a new comic launching in the UK called the DFC, and they were looking for, humour artists for it. And I think it was the other tutor on Strip Search that put me in touch with the editor on that, John McRae. And again, I'd send them samples. They had a strip that they were looking for an artist for. They took me on for that. And obviously having the Beano on my CV, as soon as someone sees that you work for the Beano, it's like, oh, you're a legit comic artist.
That helps. Yeah.
So that it creates a kind of element of trust, like, oh, you're not an unknown quantity. You can draw a Beano comic strip, so you can definitely draw something for us.
Must be halfway decent.
And it's a matter of once you've drawn something professionally, and someone can come along and maybe see that on your website, the more of that sort of thing you've done, the more potential clients will have faith in you. But there is also an element of just approaching people. So, for example, the Cartoon Network stuff, I just followed their submission process because I wanted to pitch a short regular show story to them because I'm a big fan of regular show.
Yeah.
Because every one of their issues, there's like a big ongoing story every month. And then there's a short backup story.
Right.
And I just wanted to pitch a short one to them. And their submission process is just, send them samples to their Facebook page.
Really? Through Facebook?
Yeah,
I thought you were going to say like email.
No, only through Facebook. It's different with every publisher. And this is a piece of advice that I really want to pass on to any young aspiring artists watching this. Pay attention to every publisher's submission guidelines. If they say only email us Only email them. If they say, don't email us, don't email them. Because if they figure out that you're not very good at following instructions, it doesn't create a great impression.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sent off to their Facebook page and got an email back saying, "Oh, we're launching a new comic about Uncle Grandpa, which had just started on Cartoon Network at the time. Would you like to pitch us some short stories for it?" So I did a little bit of that, but because then I'd already got my foot in the door with Boom, I felt able to pitch the regular show story that I'd originally wanted to do.
Yeah.
And again, at the time, they said, "Oh no, we've got plenty right now, but come back to us in 3 months' time and try again." So again, listen to what the publishers said. I didn't say a word to them for 3 months, and then came back to them and said, "Oh, hey, checking in again 3 months later. Any slots for this story now?" And again, right place at the right time. It just so happened that their lead artist had just left. So they said, "Okay, pitch us the short story. And also, we're looking for a new lead artist. Would you like to try out for that?" So of course I kind of jumped at the chance. And I ended up with the lead artist job. So from planning to pitch them 1 6-page story, I eventually ended up working on 12 monthly issues and then 2 graphic novels.
Wow. That is really cool. And that's good to hear as well, because when you first started, like you said, you weren't sure if you were good enough and you kind of went in a different direction to then actually pitching Cartoon Network for one of their shows.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And like,
I can't believe it myself sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. When you look back, it's like, did I do all that? Was that me? And what I'm particularly interested in is, because you're writing like humor comics, and that's a particular skill in itself, because like comedy is actually hard to write. It's hard to make people laugh, especially like different people. So what do you find is like the key difference between writing like comics that are supposed to be funny and other types of comics, say like action or drama?
Oh gosh, I don't do that much comic writing in general, to be perfectly honest. I've got my own book that I wrote called The Bizarre Adventures of Gilbert and Sullivan, which was just basically stupidity from start to finish. So it wouldn't be fair for me to try and compare it to, action comics, because I just haven't written that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's generally said, and I totally agree with it, that if you're trying to write humour, don't try and anticipate what people will find funny. Write what you find funny. And then there's bound to be people out there who will share your sense of humour, and they'll enjoy it.
That's a fair point.
Because the more you try to kind of, filter your jokes through trying to make every single person like them, the weaker they're going to become. Yeah. I think.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think if you try it, because that leads you to like a place of overthinking, and then you're trying to like guess, like you say, trying to guess what someone else would like. But if you make it for yourself first, then it kind of naturally, the sort of the humor, the jokes, whatever it might be, the situations will like naturally come out. I'm going to take that on board myself.
But I mean, I have worked on other kind of licensed properties as well. So like I did Angry Birds comic for Egmont Publishing. So yeah, I mean, I want to make the point as well that one of the reasons that I had so much doubt in myself when I was a teenager was that I really struggled to come up with my own ideas and characters.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, you can't be a cartoon maker or a comic artist if you aren't brimming over with ideas. And I mean, I still to this day struggle with that. But there's so many jobs in the industry where they need someone to work on pre-existing characters. So, like, Angry Birds already exists, regular show already exists.
Yeah.
Minnie the Minx and all the Beano characters already exist. So I don't have to generate those characters; they're already there. So I think I've very much found my niche as an artist who's happy to draw other people's characters. I mean, some comic artists just don't get on well with that. They have to create their own characters and their own world.
Yeah.
But I am perfectly happy for someone to present me with some characters and say, "Here, draw these guys."
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Like there are different roles within comics, and you don't have to be like the person that's always bringing like the original character ideas, because once you have an idea, and I know it's because I sort of come up with the character ideas and stories, but I can't draw. So I need someone to actually draw the idea. So once you have an idea, there's a whole bunch of work that goes on to get that idea out into the world. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to highlight. But you did mention your own comic that you have. Can you tell us about that story and why you went to create your own comic series?
Well, that started as basically a little joke comic that I drew in a birthday card for my husband's boyfriend at the time, because he is a Gilbert and Sullivan fan. And at the time, we were both really big fans of the anime series DigiCarrot, which is basically very, very stupid stories. The characters drawn in a kind of super deformed style. Yeah. Kind of like chibi manga.
Chibi,
yeah. So I just drew Gilbert and Sullivan in that style, having a really stupid adventure. And he found it really funny. So his positive reaction kind of inspired me to draw more of them.
Okay.
And eventually I started actually researching genuine Victorian characters and events that I could put in the stories. So for example, they meet Bram Stoker, the writer of Dracula, and he's a real vampire and that sort of thing. When I had enough of them, I made them into little mini comics and started selling them at Comic Cons.
Wow.
I got approached a few years ago by Soaring Penguin Press, John Anderson, who was the chief editor for them, and he said, "Yeah, we really like the Gilbert and Sullivan stories. Can you put together enough of them to make a book, and we'll publish it?"
Wow.
So yeah, again, that ended up as a proper book, and it just started as just something I drew to make my boyfriend laugh.
That's a success. that is really cool. And I'm getting like deja vu. I feel like you're the second person who started a series that started with a sketch in a birthday card. I don't know, this might be me, but I feel like I've heard that before, which I did not expect to happen. But so like I want to find out a bit more about your process and like the process of creating the comic. So for you, what kind of tools do you use? I assume you're not drawing on paper with pencils, but can you tell us something about the tools you use and maybe the software as well?
Yeah. I totally am doing that.
I stand corrected. So as I said it, I was afraid to say that because I thought she might just pull out a piece of paper and prove me wrong. Yeah. And here we are. There you go. Yeah. Cool.
I draw things digitally if I think they need it. So last year I did a book called Where's Nasha? I'll grab a copy of that actually.
Okay.
And that's a kind of Where's Wally, but Beano themed. So you can see all the spreads are very kind of detailed.
Yeah.
So for something like this, there's just too much small detail to actually do it on paper. So I planned this out all in pencil and paper, but then inked it all digitally.
Okay.
But for a normal comics page, I would pencil it all out and then ink it with just using the mangaka art pens.
Oh, right.
But yeah, I mean, you can. I'll grab a handful. You can see I've got a lot of different pens that I use. I just
fully stocked.
grab whatever's the right thickness for the right drawing.
Cool.
But yeah, I've tried to draw. I've tried to ink digitally, and it's too slow for me. Because when you're working for the Beano, you've got a constant weekly deadline.
Yeah.
So you can't work too slowly.
Right. Because I mean, like I said earlier, I don't draw, so that once I write, it's sort of like handed off. So I would have thought like the digital is faster or more efficient process.
You know what? I kept being told that before I actually got my Cintiq. Everybody said, "Oh, you know, once you've got a Cintiq and you can ink on screen, it'll be so much faster."
Yeah.
But whatever the technique is that you need to ink fast on a screen, I haven't got it. So I'm just sticking with what works for me for the moment.
Yeah.
Maybe one day I'll find a technique that allows me to go all digital, but it hasn't happened yet.
That's really interesting. All right. And then in terms of like your process, so one of the things I often hear from like writers or artists is that idea of writer's block or creator's block. Is that something that ever hits you? And if so, how do you get around it?
Well, if I had to write all the time, it would be a constant problem. Because as I've mentioned before, I find it very hard to actually generate ideas and characters. I mean, I have written some things. There was a mini strip I drew and wrote for a comic called Sweet the year before last, but that was just little 4-panel comics. That wasn't too difficult. And I used to write for the Beano sometimes, but yeah, I mean, writer's block is a big issue for me. And my way of tackling it is to write as little as possible and just concentrate on
avoid the situation.
So I don't really recommend it as a technique to writers. But I mean, when it comes to drawing the weekly strips, you can't get stuck because it's a deadline. You know, the Beano's got to be on the shelves every week, no matter what.
Yeah.
So if you're struggling with a particular panel or with a particular page layout, you can't walk away from it for a few days to clear your head. It's got to be done.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
sometimes it's a case of it doesn't turn out as good as you'd want it to, but it's good enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Sometimes it's better to just get it done.
Yeah, because once it's done, it's out, you can improve.
Yeah, figure out afterwards how you could have done it differently and apply that thinking to the next page that you do. Yeah,
because there'll always, will hopefully always be like another page to draw, another opportunity, and I think...
Exactly.
And the deadline definitely helps, as like sometimes for... Even I'm working on writing something now, and just as recent as yesterday, I just kind of think like, oh, I need to ultimately make this better. Like, how do I get these ideas out? And to a certain extent, because it's a project that we kickstarted, so there's a sort of rough deadline. But I'm able to take a step back, relatively speaking, and that can help. But then it can also be an issue, like you say, because then you sometimes want to get the perfect thing when you just need the good enough sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a little bit unsatisfying to put something out that you know could be a bit better, but
yeah,
you know, I mean, realistically, even the stuff that you're really happy with, the chances are you'll come back to it in 6 months or a year, and then you'll see something with that
Oh,
that
yeah.
you think, oh, I'll do it better now.
Yeah, that's why I don't read
So-
my own work. Once the book's printed, it's out, because I know then I'll be like, oh, I could have done that, I could do that, and wow, we need to pull these books from the shelves because no one can read this now. So that's really good to know as well. So, all right, I think it's the last question I have. See, but what's the best piece of advice that you have been given in your career, and did you follow it?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to when I was on strip search, and maybe it's not a specific piece of advice, but it's just the idea of trying. Just don't assume that, you can't do something or something's not going to work. Just try it and see if it does. And, maybe you'll be right. Maybe it won't work out. But then, at least you won't be wondering if it doesn't, and it might go, really good places. Like if I hadn't tried to send some samples to Boom, I never would have, ended up doing all the regular show work. And it was actually the same situation when I started working for the publisher I was working for after university. I worked for them as an editor, but I applied as a designer because I thought foolishly that they might take me on, even if I, had no art qualifications, which in hindsight was very naive.
Yeah.
But I sent in my sample and, they took me in for an interview and quite rightly said to me, well, we don't think you can make it as a designer, but we were really impressed by the research you did before you did the drawing. Okay. You've really presented all your work in well. So we actually think you could be an editor. Wow. So again, I wouldn't have ended up in that situation if I hadn't sent in the designer application.
Yeah.
So yeah, try and see what happens.
No, I think that's good advice. And even like when I look back at like I said, software engineering and leaving that, it did not work. Initially, I like you was also quite naive about how things would unfold. And it didn't unfold to a certain extent. It's not unfolding now, but you kind of like taking that step then leads you to other options. And the stuff I've been able to do and been able to build and people been able to work with would just never have happened if I had not taken that first sort of step / misstep and then figure out how to then develop and learn from there. So definitely I second that piece of advice. Also, I lied about that being my final question. My last question is, what are some of your favorite comics?
Oh gosh. I always struggle when people ask me this.
Yeah, because you didn't go through the library.
Yeah, looking at my shelves.
Yeah.
I can clearly name you some of my favourite comic artists. Okay. I really like Jill Thompson's stuff. Scary Godmother. Her lovely watercolour type illustrations. I think they're beautiful. We've got a lot of Hellboy here, like Mike Mignola. A lot of classic British humour artists like Reg Parlett and Leo Baxendale and Ken Reid. Classic kind of Beano artists. There's not many comic artists that I don't like.
Yeah. That's a good list. Yeah. No, that's cool. Thank you very much for joining me and letting us know a bit more about your journey, and hopefully people have been able to pick out some insights and some tips, especially if anyone's watching and they are an aspiring comic artist, comic creator. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Cool. And like I said, to anyone watching, you're welcome to send us feedback on this interview or as many people do, just shout at us on social media. We are at MyMadder on Twitter and at MyMadderTees on Instagram. I will also put Laura's details, if not on the screen, if I can work that out. I'll put it in the video description when we put this out later. And as I mentioned, I also create manga, so you can check out our universe of characters and stories at mymadder.com. And if anyone is particularly interested in hearing more of my voice, you can check out our Story X Story podcast, where we discuss stories across pop culture, plus give tips for people to create their own. So you can find that at mymadder.com/Story X Story. But yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys again next time. Until then, take care and stay safe.